In this screencast, I'm going to show kind of an introduction to using one brush to create a portrait, not unlike creating values on a regular sheet of paper. First thing I do is I create a new file and I unlink the background and I create some layers. One of the layers is going to be the halftone layer. And so basically it's almost like drawing on a gray piece of paper. Now there's a lot of different brushes. And the purpose of this screencast is show that with this large, low opacity HB brush, that's all you need as your only tool for creating a portrait in Photoshop. Now what I'm doing here is I'm kind of showing this ball shape and kind of showing the interplay between form shadow and cast shadow and highlights. And if you notice, this is sped up obviously really quickly, but what I'm doing is I'm erasing and I am drawing with the same brush, and it's this HB brush, and I'm continuously at a very low opacity, but I'm changing the dimension of the brush. I'm making it smaller and bigger. The small is going to give me kind of like the very edge, and it's going to help me establish cast shadows. And then this larger version of the brush is going to help me throw down my lights and my darks. And what I'm doing in this kind of drawing is I'm not really so worried about detail as we're worried about shadow and light and the interplay between those two, and highlighting those shapes. So when you're lighting the head, you're going to be looking at the same principle of form and the direction of light. Where the light's coming to the right side of the ball, what we have here is kind of the first thing what you're going to do when you're drawing a portrait is you're making that shape in the inner part of the eye. And even though it looks like I'm making lines here, again, I'm always looking at creating only the shapes. And the more accurate you could create these shapes, the more of a likeness you're going to get. I used to think that when I made a drawing that I would kind of wing the shadows, but the shadow shapes are actually what informs the form, and the actual object, or the face in this matter, is going to be what's informing the way the light is kind of showing up on the image, how the shadow is being cast. So the first thing I do when I'm trying to do a portrait, which is basically one brush, trying to just basically practice. On one layer I kind of create a roadmap. What I do is I make these lines that correlate from one feature to the other. And I start to see sort of a gesture of the head. And that's on one layer. It's kind of sloppy, but that is going to kind of help me navigate my way through this face. And one of the things about painting with this brush is, with this low opacity, you just continuously try to block in these shapes. And it kind of jumps. The video is going to jump here in a little while because eyes do take a really long time, and they do require a lot of practice. But once you do kind of create these shadow shapes in the eyes, you can then begin to correlate that eye shape to the rest of the features and sort of build it together like a puzzle. Now with Photoshop, you can erase and draw like constantly. The skill set for digital painting is actually a lot different than regular drawing. You don't have to worry about racing through your paper. You can continuously go back and forth and just study how shadow falls on the face. It's going to be very difficult to draw this beautiful portrait, right away. But if you're basically trying to make correlations between features on the face on this bottom layer, you can start to have a roadmap